Good morning. Today we're going to take a look at reflections, which are also called flips. So yesterday we did slides and translations, talked about what moved it up, down, left, and right. Today we're going to take a look at how do we make it flip over a line or flip diagonally. So how do we do that, and then what kind of rules can we come up with? Excuse me. So off we go. Examples. Let's draw the pre-image and image using the given domain and reflection function, and then we're going to describe the translation in words. So we're going to take a look at these one at a time and kind of get a gauge for what our rules could possibly be. Okay, so I've already gone through and I've drawn the pre-image for all of the examples that we're going to be doing today. So as you follow along, just know that I have already done that part for us. I've already plotted the points A, B, and C. So I've already plotted those over here, connected it. We got this nice pretty triangle going over here. We want to use this rule over here, get our A prime, B prime, and C prime. We're going to graph that, and then we're going to see what happens. So kind of wait for the little surprise after we graph it and see what happens. So here we go. We're going to find our A prime, B prime, and C prime. So we're going to go through and find that for each of our points. So this rule over here tells us to keep our X and change Y to the opposite sign. Keep the X, change Y to the opposite sign. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to keep all of my X values because that's what the rule says do. Keep -3, keep -2, keep +4. So I keep all the X values. Now I'm going to change the sign of the Y value. If it was negative, make it positive. If it was positive, make it negative. So this is going to change to -1. This is going to change to -4. And this is going to change to -2, excuse me. Now, it's important to note that all of these were positive, true, but this means to change to the opposite sign. So if it was negative, it would indeed become positive. So now I'm going to graph these. So we're going to graph -3 and -1. We're going to graph -2 and -4. And we're going to graph 4, -2. And graph. Boom, boom. And we'll go through and label which point is which. This is A prime, B prime, and C prime. So now we have a visual for what's happened. So our pre-image is in the black and our image is in the light blue color. So now I can kind of see what happens. So definitely I can see there was some sort of flip, some sort of reflection. So it looks like we had the first triangle and then we flipped over. So it looks like we were here and then we made some sort of reflection. So this is actually a reflection over the x-axis. So I'm going to use a different color in here. And this is a reflection over that green line there. So this is reflects over x-axis. So that is our rule for number 1. It is a reflection over the x-axis. All right, let's try another one. We have several more to try because there's lots of different rules that we're going to make sure we know by the end of this lesson. The next rule. So I've already drawn our pre-image, and we're going to go through and use this rule here. This time we're using -xy, graph it, and then see what happens. Okay, so it says we want to take the opposite of x and then keep y the same. So I'm going to take the opposite of +1, keep y the same. Opposite of +5, keep the y. Opposite, keep the y. So these are our A prime points. So these are our A and B and C prime points that we're going to be plotting in just a minute. So we took the opposite of our X values, keep the Y the same. Opposite of the X values, opposite signs, and then keep the Y values the same. So if I go plot this, I got -1, +3. I got -5, +3. And then we have -3, -3. And connect. And I can kind of already see, again, I see some sort of flip happening. We just need to distinguish where was the flip happening. So I can already see that. I can see that this time it flipped in a vertical direction. So it was here and then it flipped over like that. So I can see that this time it's a vertical direction. So this is actually a reflection over the y-axis. So that green line is what I drew in there. That is actually a reflection over the y-axis. So let's write our rule in. Reflects over y-axis. And ta-da! So that is our rule for B. Okay, let's move on and see what other kind of things we can discover. All right, C. Go ahead and plot your points and connect them and make your triangle. And we'll go through and figure out what our A prime, B prime, and C prime points are. Let's see what our rule is for this particular problem. This time we're doing -x minus 4 and keeping the y. So -x minus 4, keep your y coordinate. That's the rule that we're doing this time. So we're going to take 1, plug it in here. So -1 minus 4, I got -5. I'm going to take this -1, plug it in for my x coordinate. Now this is a negative, negative. So we know that that's going to be a positive. Let's do that again. This is a -1 in here. I'm plugging this into a negative sign. A negative and a negative is a positive. So this is 1 minus 4. And 1 minus 4 is -3. Same thing with this -2. I'm taking -2 and substituting that in here. 2 negatives make a positive. So this is 2 minus 4. So that's -2. And it says to keep my y coordinate. So that's easy. Keep my y, keep the y, and keep the y. Now let's do our thing. We're going to go plot these points. We're going to be plotting masters by the time this is all over with. So we're going to take -5 and -1. I got -3, 3. I got -2, -2. And it falls right on the same point as the other one. Okay. We are going to label. So this is A prime, B prime, and C prime. Notice that our C and C prime are right on top of each other, and that's okay. So they intersected in the same spot, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So this one is a reflection over a vertical line, but this time the vertical line is not the y-axis, it's some other vertical line. So if I kind of imagine there is a line that's coming through the center point here. So let me put that green line in there for us. This time, these two triangles reflect over this vertical line. And what's the equation for this vertical line? Well, I know that my origin is right here. So this is -1, this is -2. So this reflects over the line. X equals -2. So it reflected over this vertical green line, which is -2. So it reflects over that vertical line. All right. So it's always good when you finish the final product, you got a nice little visual for what's happening there. All right, next. So this time we're going to be working with a trapezoid. I've already graphed our A, B, C, D, and we're going to go through and find A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime. The rule that we're working with this time is that we are going to keep our X value, and we're going to do -y minus 2. So keep the X value, we're doing -y minus 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in all the X values since I know they stay the same. I'm not going to be changing the -3, the 2, or the 0. So I'm going to keep -3, keep -3, keep +2, keep 0. So those are not changing because my rule says to keep. It says to keep it. So now I have -y minus 2. So we'll go through and do a little bit of calculations there. Feel free to use calculator or do some mental math. I'm going to take this -2 and plug it in for y. That's a negative times a negative that makes a positive. So that's the same as 2 minus 2. That gives us 0. This one, I'm plugging in -4. Again, I have a negative, and that's a negative. So that's actually going to be a positive. So this is 4 minus 2, which is 2. Lots of negatives in this problem, which is good, getting us practice with our signs. I have a -2 in here. We already know what it's going to be, but we'll go through it again. 2 negatives is a positive. So 2 minus 2, I got another 0. And the last one, we already know what -4 is going to turn out to be. So 2 negatives make a positive. 4 minus 2 gives us 2. So we're going to go through and we're going to plot these points. So we're going to start at the origin, and I got -3, 0. I got -3, positive 2. I got 2, 0. And then we have 0, 2. And we'll connect. So this is what my trapezoid looks like now. And we'll go through and label our prime points, A prime, B prime, and this was C prime. So now I can see that this is a reflection or flip, so those two words are synonymous, over some sort of horizontal line. So we were starting kind of here, and then we flipped over like that for a visual effect there. So I see that it's a reflection somewhere in here is where my line of symmetry is. So if I draw that in, so that's this green line that I'm drawing in here. I can see that it is a reflection over this horizontal line. So it reflects over. So what is the equation for that horizontal line? Where my origin is in here, it is right here. So here's my origin. And so this point must be -1. So it is a reflection over the line y equals -1. Reflection over the line y equals -1. Okay, we got 2 more that we're going to take a look at, and then we will try to put all of these in some sort of generic rule so that every time we see this, we do this. Every time we see something else, we do whatever the set rule is. Okay, so I've already labeled our A, B, and C. Let's go through and find our A prime, B prime, C prime. All right, so let's do our thing. This time the rule says to switch your y and x. So you just switch them. So no algebra necessarily do. You just switch your x and y coordinates. So this was -3, 0. So this is going to be 0, -3. This was -3, 4. Switch it. It's going to be 4, -3. This was 0, 4. Flip it. It's going to be 4, 0. So don't change your signs, don't do anything like that. You're just switching the positions of your x and y. You're just switching the positions. Let's go graph. So we have 0, -3. We got 4, -3. And we got 4, 0. And connect. And label our A prime, B prime, C prime. A prime, B prime, C prime. Now, let's see here. So I see that A was there, and this is A prime. I see that B jumped all the way from this quadrant over to this quadrant, and then C kind of did something here. So it's not necessarily a vertical or horizontal reflection. This is actually going to be a diagonal reflection. And this one rotates. This one reflects. We'll get to rotations later this week. Okay. This one reflects across this diagonal line. Now, what is the equation for this diagonal line? Well, for Math 1, this is our most basic linear equation. So this reflects over y equals x. So this is a reflection over the line y equals x. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at one more reflection before we start summarizing our rules. So we have another trapezoid that we're working with. We're going to go find our prime points, our image points. This time the rule says to not only switch your x and y's, but you take the opposite of them. So you switch the x and y's, and then if it was positive, make it negative. If it was negative, make it positive. So two things are happening with this rule. You switch the positions of the numbers and you change the sign. So you switch the numbers and you change the sign. So this 1, 1 is going to switch, and they're both ones, and it's not really going to make a difference, but they both become negative. So this is going to be -1, -1. Now for B, we switch the positions, so it's going to be 1, 4. But not only do we switch the positions, but we make them both the opposite signs of what they are. So it's going to be negative, negative. These 3 3s are not going to change anything, so they'll both be -3, -3. Switch the positions and change their signs. So two things happen. Switch the position and change the sign. Let's plot these. So I got -1, -1, -1. We got -1, -4. We got -3, -3. And we have -3, -2. And connect. Label which one is which. So this is my A prime, B prime, C, and D. So the black is our pre-image and the blue is our image. So this is what we started with and this is where we ended at. Now this one is a reflection. Very similar to the last one we just did. It's just a reflection in the opposite direction. So this one is actually a reflection across this diagonal line. And that diagonal line is y equals, I'll give you a second to think there while I'm writing. So this one reflects over y equals, so the first one has a positive slope, this one has a negative slope. So it reflects over the line y equals -x. So let me zoom out so you can see. So this one reflects over y equals -x. So now that we have all 6 of these, let's zoom out. Okay, so we got all 6 of these. And in the next video, we're going to go through and see if we can come up with a generic rule for all of these to apply as we go through and do our reflections.